Is a total badass.
The news is that he warned us, all of us, together as one human peoples, that, quote, artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Ooh. You know the classic story. Humans invent robots to keep us company, help us with daily tasks, overcome the daily obstacles that we as weak humans cannot even come close to overcoming. Then, the robots become smarter than us, reproduce better versions of themselves at alarming speeds. We are all enslaved and eventually destroyed.
We've all seen it in fictional movies like The Terminator, Blade Runner, and The Matrix, a snapshot at artificial intelligence run amok. But what if it was not only a problem exclusive to the movies? What if the robots that scientists are taking great strides to develop could one day outsmart us? It's a notion that world-famous physicist Stephen Hawking called some attention to in a recent interview with the BBC. Hawking has been living with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, for over 50 years now, and he benefits from the advancements in artificial intelligence. But he warned that if the technology matches human capabilities, it could take off on its own and basically redesign itself as an ever-increasing rate. So what exactly does that mean, and could it be a red flag in a burgeoning field? To discuss, earlier I spoke with Josh Bongard. He's a professor of computer science at the University of Vermont and an expert in artificial intelligence. I first asked him for his thoughts on what Hawking had to say.
It's an interesting statement, Amir, as you mentioned. Professor Hawking, along with several others, have very strong views about what's known as the technological singularity. And the singularity is the idea that technology and artificial intelligence in particular will increase up to a point where they will accelerate and surpass human intelligence and perhaps replace us as the most intelligent species on this planet. It's a very extreme viewpoint indeed.
But as I understand it, there are others who disagree with him. What do they say about the field of AI?
Well, just as Professor Hawking and several others are extremely pessimistic about the future of technology, there are others that are very optimistic and believe that humans and machines will somehow merge and we will reach some point post-scarcity. So there will no longer be hunger, there will no longer be want, there will no longer be human misery, and that the ultimate of all of our tools, AI, will lift us out of these problems that have plagued us throughout human history.
And Stephen Hawking is, of course, bringing up this idea, likely to remind the community and the public that this is a question that really needs to be addressed, needs to be explored. Is it being addressed? Is the other side of the coin, the potential detrimental effects of this technology, being researched?
There are now a number of think tanks at some of the most prominent universities throughout the world that are looking at the ethical side of artificial intelligence and particularly focusing on what's happened in the last 5 or 10 years with the acceleration of this technology.
And for those people that fear the worst, that fear robots will begin to control us instead of us controlling them, what do you say to them? What kinds of safeguards are in place to make sure AI machines don't run amok?
That's a good point, and I think it is important for us to address where this technology is going. I do believe, however, we need to really look at this technology and understand that it's not spiraling out of control. Like all of the technologies from nuclear power and weapons all the way back to stone clubs are ultimately a tool, and it's up to us to decide how to use them. Artificial intelligence is different from a lot of the technologies we've developed in the past, however, in that we seem to be merging with this technology. All of us use technology, and perhaps perhaps without knowing it, using AI in our everyday lives. We're communicating with technology right now, and one could ask, where does the human part of our interview end and the technological part begin? And I think the future is going to see a greater and greater merging of technologies and humans. So it's not so much an us and them scenario as a we together scenario. And that makes me optimistic about the future of AI.
You know, ironically, the alarm is being raised here by Stephen Hawking, someone who is relying on and benefiting from this technology himself. In fact, as I understand it, he just got an upgrade that will allow him to write up to 10 times faster and communicate more effectively, and that's certainly going to have a huge impact on his life. Can you talk very briefly about the advances we're seeing in the field more generally that are bringing a lot of practical benefits to people?
Absolutely. So you brought up Professor Hawking's new speech interface. And absolutely, there again, you see humanity and technology being entwined in ever more intimate fashions. And like all of our tools, it's being used to empower people. It's allowing Professor Hawking to communicate more effectively. We're also seeing the rise of surgical implants that have an AI component to them. There are many human users now of cochlear implants that allow them to hear, retinal implants that allow people to see, and we're now on the cusp of new technologies which are brain implants, some technology and AIs that can communicate directly with our brains. It's scary. It's a new technology. We're always apprehensive of the unknown. But as we've seen in the last few years, most of these technologies are empowering people rather than disenfranchising them.
Well, just like with any technology, it seems there is a good, a bad, and of course the ugly. Josh Vongard, a professor of computer science at the University of Vermont. Thanks for weighing in on that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Olafsson doesn't have to think about how his foot moves. That's despite sporting a bionic prosthetic leg. He felt the new sense of control over his bionic limb almost instantly.
As soon as I put my foot on, it took me about 10 minutes to get control of it. And I could stand up and just walk away.
It's all thanks to tiny sensors in his remaining leg muscle picking up the brain's signals to nerve endings and linked to a receiver in his prosthesis. Össur Thorvalda Ingvarsson performed the surgical procedure to insert the sensors in patients.
We put in sensors into the muscles who pick up this signal, and then in fact that signal is moved away into the prosthetics, and then the prosthetics react as your brain actually wants.
Össur, a prosthetic specialist, uses implanted myoelectric sensors developed in the United States combined with its own bionic limbs. The Icelandic company says it's the first time amputees have been able to control lower limb prostheses subconsciously. Patients will soon be able to upgrade existing prosthetics and control them using their mind. In the future, the sensors could be developed to react to the environment.
Our ultimate goal is to actually replace the function of the lost limb. The next step might be to get sensing from the environment, so you have a feedback loop.
For now, Gumi's body is still adapting to the responsive prosthetic.
Every day, if you are using it, you're always getting more and more control over what you're doing with your foot. So in a way, every day you're learning more how to walk proper, even with the foot, how to use it, going downhill, uphill, downstairs, upstairs, even sitting down and standing up from a chair.
Össur plans to extend trials of their mind-controlled bionic limb beyond Gumi and a second patient. They say it brings amputees a step closer to truly integrating their prostheses with their bodies.
Increasingly, technology is getting smarter, more intuitive, and it's doing more. And while all of this is aimed at making life better, are we headed toward a tipping point where we go from being served by technology to being threatened or even killed by it? I spoke earlier with legal and media analyst Lionel of Lionel Media and began by asking him about the future of robotic warfare.
Well, it's a classic, internet and social media meme, Ben. What could go wrong? Well, a couple of things. If it can be hacked, it can be compromised. Now, when we think of robots, we think of this kind of Danger Will Robinson, friendly, cute. In fact, whenever you see the mainstream media report on something that, let's say, Boston Dynamics does, they say, cool. Now understand something very interesting. Boston Dynamics was purchased by Google. Google now picked up, what, 8 robot companies? Why is Google involved in robots? Also, look at who they're involved with as well. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And what's interesting about this, Ben, is you take these people and you take robots, you merge them together, DARPA with Google, with the government, and then you have the notion of weaponizing them. And that's what's really intriguing. And I've got to tell you, one of the greatest oxymorons of all time, next to criminal justice. It was a program in 2012, a $12 million program, that then Boston Dynamics contracted with Google to support. And what it was this notion called supervised autonomy. Supervised autonomy. And these humanoid robots, of course benign and friendly and anodyne and helpful, would be used in disaster situations. Humanoid so that we'd recognize them. Humanoid so that we could converse with them, in essence, versus a refrigerator on wheels. And it basically tried to teach them to, on its own, have a supervised version of autonomy, to be autonomous, but of course, never losing control. This, if you could just imagine how this could go wrong, if weaponized, sky's the limit.
Yeah, literally. Absolutely. Well, and what you're describing essentially, Lionel, is a Terminator, right? It's a robot that looks like a human and that has these functions. Talk to me a little bit about how advanced the warfare research is right now. The idea of creating these autonomous, essentially killer robots, so that we don't need soldiers. We can put them into war zones. We don't lose the lives of Americans who are going to fight these wars. What's the moral issue that we're facing here with this?
The moral is, it's fascinating, because if you think about this, in the history of warfare, one of the most important events ever was the longbow. The longbow separated humans. For the first time, it was always mano a mano and knives and clubs and spears, up close and personal. The longbow removed us. So therefore, we became less involved, less emotionally committed to the battle. Then later on with artillery and the like. But now you have a person, let's say a teen, working a toggle switch, or somebody in a Quonset hut on a Las Vegas strip somewhere. But there was a human intervention, a human component to this. What if, Ben, instead of having somebody who says, wait a minute, this is wrong, wait a minute, this is a wedding party in Yemen, wait a minute, these orders are against the code, against the rules of war. What if it's a system, a robotic system, Pax Robotica, dare I say, that is hacked, that goes askew? The same type of oops that we feel sometimes when credit cards are hacked and compromised at Home Depot. I mean, the Iran talks are important. That's just, I can't believe I'm saying this, that's just nuclear weapons. What if you had robots everywhere and you had no means of calling them back? The Isaac Asimov iRobot nightmare come to fruition. Well, and this is happening now.
It is happening now, and obviously there's a big psychological toll even now for soldiers who are having to conduct drone warfare even further once we get into these other things. We got to go, though. Legal and media analyst Lionel of Lionel Media, as always, thank you for your time.
You think about an infant. An infant's born and they develop and they grow. We become cognitive creatures that perceive the world and learn rules and those types of things. For a robot, we're trying to do the same types of things, but it's very difficult. There's a whole chain of capabilities that you need to build to get to higher levels of autonomy. We are developing this autonomous navigation capability that are hopefully going to save people's lives, right? And take our warfighters out of harm's way.
Look around it. So, look at the carpet, see if you notice any wires around it. Pull it back.
Okay. All right, and now drop it. Mm-hmm. Turn it.
Yeah.
Really what we're trying to do is increase the standoff distance to harm. State of the art right now is one operator, one robot. Where we want to go is higher level commands that frees up the operator and allows the robot to do more things on its own.
Got it. Nice, dude.
I mean, you'll never completely eliminate the soldier from the fight. I mean, as much as they want to try to, hey, maybe 100 years from now.
From our perspective, we're trying to develop tools, automate, help out, do the things that allow them to do their job better.
The robot's over there.
All right, rookie. Master to rookie one.
You talking to yourself?
Proceed to start.
Otto! Come on.
It's not going to get out. I do another round.
No, it's gonna do it. Eventually it does it.
Autonomy is, let's face it, just hard. Google and Uber and all these people that are investing in autonomy, they have lanes, there's structure, there's signs. For us, we're traveling in unknown environments. Think about a camera having to perceive the world. It's easy for a human to say, oh, that's a person, but how do you instill that kind of intelligence in a system? You can think about it, these building blocks that we're building up. We're going from pixels to objects to identifying those objects. With a limited field of view, robots have a hard time seeing what's next to them. Am I going to drive off the side of this cliff?
At the ZV-1, we are going autonomous. Auto. Manual.
The rocks aren't high enough to be an object, but they're rough enough that we shouldn't traverse. And because we don't see that in this representation, we drive off the road. How do we keep the cameras calibrated? How do we keep the steering aligned, right? Does the vehicle do that, or do we need an engineer in the field? Are we adding to the problem by adding more people in the field? That's not really what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is add a tool into the existing force structure that allows them to do their job more effectively. There has been demonstrations of weapons on robots, but for me, I don't see a killer robot. I see a robot that is a tool that is helping our warfighter do the jobs that they need to do so they can fight the fight. I wouldn't say that high levels of autonomy is so far away, but it's really about building the technical base to get there. Can we walk, talk, transform, as you see in the movies? No. But are we working those hard problems that are going to make our machines more intelligent and more capable? Yes.
The Korean government has partnered up with state-run research institutes to test remotely controlled robotic machines for deep-sea excavations. And for more on this story, we have our Kim Ji-yeon.
A robot swims through the muddy waters using its 6 metal legs and is remotely lowered to the seafloor. It picks up a piece of porcelain with its metal arms, which are remotely controlled by operators in a control room. Up until now, Korea's West Sea was off limits for a lot of divers, as the area is notorious for its high currents and frosty waters. But this piece of underwater equipment is expected to make it easier to excavate objects of historical importance.
It's developed to help divers excavate in the deep water.
The machine, known as the CR200 or Crabster, is part of a $18.6 million project spearheaded by the country's ocean ministry. It partnered up with the Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering and the National Research Institute of Maritime Cultural Heritage for the future development of deep-sea robots without the help of foreign technology. The crafter is equipped with cameras that can send sonar and ultrasonic images of underwater objects some 150 meters away. The commercialization of the machine will start in mid-May after a 1-month test period ends. The technology is also expected to be applicable for other purposes, such as the exploration of natural resources. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The idea of robots as possible rescuers in disaster zones is often mooted, particularly in areas deemed too dangerous for human volunteers. These University of Oslo researchers want to help make that a reality. They've designed a batch of self-learning robots. Computer algorithms help give the robots innate knowledge that helps them navigate potential barriers and obstacles. Associate Professor Kira Gletter and his colleagues 3D print the would-be rescuers themselves.
We are using 3D printers to construct their legs, which are then the legs, the shapes of the legs and how they're all put together are the product of this big computer simulation and automatic design process. And then we 3D print the shapes and assemble with motors for testing them in the real world.
Researcher Ivan Samuelson is testing 5 basic designs of robots, first virtually and then on the lab floor. Team leader Professor Jim Torreson says narrowing the gap between on-screen and real performance is key to robots' eventual real-world success.
It will be important to have predictable behavior of robots. We have to know that they wouldn't behave unexpectedly.
Gletter says the robots could eventually be fitted with mini 3D printers that make replacement parts.
In case there is some unexpected barrier, some new terrain, or if a part of the robot breaks or somehow does not cope with the environment, then we would like the robot to be able to repair itself or adapt and maybe invent a new part or a new shape so that it can better cope with this challenging environment.
The team says such robots could also be used to extract minerals or explore distant planets.
Your science will be responsible for humanity's extinction.